Is there anything in the world that should be a higher priority than one's own family? Listen to the story of one man who puts his own convenience and feelings first and ended up in a pitiful way. My name is Leah. I'm a 35-year-old housewife, busy every day working part-time, doing housework, and raising a child. My husband Joshua is an ordinary office worker, and we have our 4-year-old daughter Zoe. She is our princess. My daughter is growing up well, and I feel like we have a perfect life together. Our marriage is relatively happy, and I have no complaints about my husband. I thought that our days would continue to be peaceful. But my daily life was disrupted by a certain event. What? Your sister is pregnant? The news took me by surprise. Because my sister-in-law had always said that she would be single for the rest of her life, and that she would be devoted to her work. She was what you would call a career woman, and I secretly respected her for that. Congratulations! What's he like? Is there going to be a wedding soon? When I asked my husband, he looked at me like he was uncomfortable to answer. My sister's partner has a wife and kids. What? That's... Well, my sister was more passionate about it. She knew he has married for a long time and continued the relationship anyway. Then she found out she was pregnant, and he ran away and disappeared. So she decided to have the baby alone. Oh, is that so? It's a lot to deal with, huh? To be honest, as a married woman, I was a bit uncomfortable that she would have a relationship with someone she knew to be married. But I decided to be happy for her pregnancy. So it seems that she's going to go back to her parents' house to raise her child. Even though my parents are still there, it must be a lot of work. I'm thinking of checking in on her until things settle down, you know. I understand his concerns for his unmarried sister who is going to have a baby. That's why I accepted my husband's proposal. Okay, let me know if there's anything I can do. Thanks, I appreciate it. You take care of Zoe for me, please. I guess my parents and I would be enough to deal with the situation. I was a little touched that my husband is a really kind person. I knew he was a good father. That's what I thought at the time. Time passed, and my sister-in-law gave birth to a healthy baby boy. His name was Aaron. I thought it'd be inconvenient for them that we visit right after the birth, so I decided to see the baby after things had settled down. But then I started to notice something strange in my husband. Hey, Mom, isn't Dad coming home today? Sorry, honey. He's busy right now. Let's be patient a little longer. I wish I could talk to Daddy. Zoe's words made my heart ache. My husband hasn't come home for days now. Since my sister-in-law gave birth, my husband only comes home about 2 days a week. The rest of the days, he spends at his parents' house. I accepted my husband's proposal, but I never imagined it would go this far. Hey, Joshua, I think this is a little too weird. You should come home a little more often. Zoe misses you. I called my husband and told him right away. But he said, What are you talking about? She has a baby now and it's the hardest time of her life. My husband got upset, saying I was selfish and handed the phone to his parents. Hello, Leah. I'm sorry, but we just had a newborn baby. If you have a child too, you would understand that, right? It's true. You know our daughter has no husband. Why don't you show a little compassion? Neither my parents-in-law nor my husband seemed to think this situation is unusual. That a father comes home only 2 days a week. After that, I patiently continued to ask my husband for help. Then he said, Leah, I didn't know you were such a cold person. All right, I'll come home. And he started coming home except on weekdays, but clearly he wasn't happy. I was angry at his attitude, but my daughter was so happy to see her daddy back that I swallowed my anger. Then one day, "Hey, where the hell are you?" I called my husband in a harsh tone. "Where am I? Of course I'm at my parents'." "What? It's Zoe's birthday today. I told you yesterday. Why don't you come home?" "What? Today is the day we are having dinner at my parents' house, you know. Besides, I have to bathe Aaron later." "Huh? Whose father are you?" By the time I raised my voice, the phone was already off the hook. My husband didn't come home that day after all. "I wonder, Daddy doesn't like me? I wish we could have had birthday cake together," Zoe murmured with a dejected look on her face. "Daddy's busy at work today, so let's eat cake with Mommy today, okay?" I almost cried myself as I watched my daughter's sad face as she puts the cake in her mouth, fighting back tears. "Whose father are you? What is with you and your sister?" "Well, it's..." "What? Is there something?" "No, it's not like that. It's just she's going through a lot, so I have to be there for her." "But your mom and dad are at home. Why do you need to be there too?" When I asked him about it, he just looked at me like I was the bad guy. I remember when my husband and I decided to get married, my sister-in-law said this to me. "I thought my brother loved me the most, but I'm glad he finally found the right person." At the time, I just thought my sister-in-law was a wonderful, independent career woman, and thought they care for each other deeply as a brother and a sister. But isn't that all? My suspicion grew. Some time passed, and Aaron turned 1 year old. We decided to have a birthday party at my parents-in-law's house. To be honest, I didn't want to go. "Is Aaron getting bigger? I want to play with him," my daughter said so innocently. And it's her cousin's birthday, so I decided to take her to the party. "Let's celebrate Aaron's birthday with the whole family," my husband said. You weren't there for Zoe's birthday. I remembered how she was sad that day, but said nothing. On the day of the party, we dressed Zoe in her favorite dress and left for my in-laws' house. My husband had gone back to his parents-in-law's house the day before, so it was just me and Zoe. After a year of this lifestyle, it had become the norm. My husband is away on a lot of business trips, and it feels like that. When we arrived at my parents-in-law's house, there was a lot of food, decorations, and presents for Aaron. We're all lined up. "Happy birthday, Aaron!" Zoe showed Aaron the presents and handed them to his mother, the sister-in-law. "Wow, Aaron, I'm so happy for you." Without a word of thanks, the sister-in-law walked right past Zoe. I got the impression that she has become a bit of a bad person. She didn't used to be like this. My daughter seemed a little hurt by her attitude, and I had a sore look on her face. At this point, I was in the mood to go home. Then my husband, who was already drunk, called my daughter and said, "Zoe, come here." Zoe felt happy to be called by her father and ran to him smiling. "Zoe is going to be Aaron's wife in the future, okay?" he said. "What the?" I was about to say something, but my daughter replied, "No, I am going to marry William." "William? Who's that?" "William? He's my friend from preschool. He's smart and cool. I like William. Zoe said this and tried to tell him what happened at the preschool. Then, my husband suddenly, "No, you were going to marry Aaron. Don't think about anything else." He yelled at her like a crazy person. I couldn't help but storm over to my husband. "Hey, what are you saying? Zoe is scared." "You, Leah, you should at least discipline your daughter. She can't have a boyfriend." "I can't believe you'd say such a thing to your own daughter." Moreover, my sister-in-law said, "I'm looking forward to the wedding. Don't let Zoe go out with anyone." Leah, understood? She wasn't joking. She looked serious. It was even creepier that my parents-in-law were laughing as if they agreed with my sister-in-law. I can't take it anymore. I don't want to be in this place one more second. I couldn't help but raise my voice. "Don't be ridiculous. Zoe is a person, not a puppet." I took my daughter by the hand and left my parents-in-law's house. She's never had a grown man yell at her like that before, and she was sobbing her eyes out. "That's not Daddy. That's not Daddy. That's not Daddy. Right, Mommy?" I hugged her tight and made up my mind. I don't need him. He's a lousy husband and father. I took immediate action. To protect my daughter, I decided that she and I would stay with my parents for a while. Finally, about 2 weeks after we separated, I received a call from my husband. "Hey, where are you?" I didn't have to answer that question. "What do you want?" I can't believe he found out we'd move out after 2 weeks. I guess that means he didn't come home at all. After all, he doesn't care about me or our daughter. "What's wrong with you? How's Zoe?" My husband asked impatiently. I don't have to answer that question either. Bye. With that, I hang up the phone. I wanted to avoid any contact between Zoe and my husband for a while, so I didn't tell him where we were. But then, he started contacting me every day. "Come on, Leah. Tell me where you are. I need to see Zoe. We are family. Being separate from each other is not right." And when I wouldn't tell him where we were, he finally exploded in anger. "Don't turn Zoe around for your reasons. Who are you to tell me what to do?" He was so selfish that I got angry and yelled at him over the phone. "If you were going to talk like that, you might as well come here. I'll give you the facts." When I told my husband that I was staying at my parents' house, he visited me right away that weekend. When Zoe saw my husband, she quickly hid behind me. He was shocked by her reaction. "Zoe, hey, it's Daddy. What's wrong?" "I don't like you. You scare me. I want Mommy. Mommy only." She grabbed my clothes and wouldn't let go. Deciding it was too dangerous to continue, I took my husband outside. "Zoe, why?" He's holding his head in his hands. "You see, it's not me who's rejecting you. It's Zoe. Of course she rejects you. After you yelled at her like that. No wonder she hates you. A father who never comes home and puts his nephew before her." "But I did it for my sister's sake." "Whose father are you? What is your sister to you?" My husband is silent. I asked my parents to take care of my daughter for now and decided to go to a nearby coffee shop to talk with my husband about the future. As soon as I got to the table, I presented the divorce papers to my husband. He looked at me with a stunned expression on his face. Please, divorce me. I want to get away from you, and so does Zoe. I only wanted to do it for my sister. I thought you and Zoe would understand. I don't understand what he's saying anymore. Why do we have to go along with your selfishness? I came down hard on my husband, demanding to know what he had been doing and saying. I could have laughed it off if you had joked about Zoe becoming Aaron's wife. But you yelled at her and never apologized. Do you have any idea how much it hurt Zoe? And how much she cried? You are always talking about yourself. I ask you again, what does your sister mean to you? She doesn't seem like just a sister to me. Then, my husband began to whisper the truth. My husband and his sister were really close. They traveled together to hot springs and overseas, sent each other presents to each other's birthdays, and they always shared a room together at home. When my sister-in-law found out that my husband and I were getting married, she told me that she thought my brother loved her the most. I knew it was to be expected, but they were siblings with an unusual and extraordinary emotional connection. I don't have a relationship with her, you know, but I love her. I love her as a person, and I love her as a sister. So when I found out that she was going to have a baby without being married, I wanted to help her. Having Aaron and Zoe get married was my husband and sister-in-law's idea. If we can be together, then let our children get married. How horrifying. The reason behind the husband neglecting his wife and daughter. I see the whole picture now. Do you think I'm going to let you get away with it? I will never forgive you for your cruelty to Zoe. And how dare you can say family should be together? My husband kept his head down and said in a quiet voice, My sister is moving out soon. She's getting married. Huh? So you were just going to get lonely and try to make us a family again? That's not going to happen. My husband's immediate response was to hang on to me. Please, I'll be a good father from now on. I'll be a good husband. Please, Leah. He bowed his head. Give me a break. I don't trust you anymore. Zoe feels the same way. We don't trust your parents and your sister too. It's completely insane that people can smile so openly about what happened at the birthday party. Since then, Zoe has never been able to speak well to any adults outside of me and my parents. She just wanted to celebrate her cousin's birthday. You destroyed her innocent soul. I won't let you do it anymore, and I will never forgive you. I want a divorce. I'll get custody. I can't leave my daughter with you. What do you say? I've just completely cut off my husband's lifeline. Goodbye, I said coldly. I will do everything I can for my daughter. Always have and always will. I became a mother with a determination. After that, my husband and I divorced. I got custody of my daughter, and he's paying me monthly child support. After the divorce, he moved back in with his parents. I guess the separation from his daughter was very hard on him because he started missing a lot of work and eventually resigned. He's now unemployed and reckless. I know this because his parents are kind of enough to tell me what's going on with him. Please give him a chance. He's Zoe's father after all. I'm not going back together with him. If I did, there's no point of getting a divorce. He had it all coming. It's not right for him to come crying to me now. There must be another reason why my husband is in such a miserable state, and it's just not the divorce. My sister-in-law, with whom he has an unusual relationship, has moved out. By the way, my sister-in-law is married to the father of Aaron, the man she had an unfaithful relationship. He divorced his wife and remarried my sister-in-law, and were forced to pay his ex-wife a considerable amount of alimony. His sister is also in a difficult situation financially. Well, if she wanted to marry him, even if she had to pay the price, I guess that's fine. But I hear that their marriage is quickly deteriorating due to their financial difficulties. Money's tight, and the typical ending is near. As for me, I quit my part-time job after the divorce and got a full-time job. I'm raising my daughter with the help of my parents. Just knowing that my daughter is happy and enjoying her life makes me, her mother, happy. I'm glad I had her, and I'm grateful to my ex-husband for giving me this child. On my birthday, Zoe baked a cake with my mother and wrote me a letter. Thank you for everything, Mom. You make me so proud of you. I love you. My daughter hugs me. Thank you. I love you too, Zoe. I would do anything for her. I would overcome anything. A mother cannot rest to protect her daughter's smile.
My husband used up our savings to buy an apartment to live with his parents. He went nuts after our divorce.
My parents really wanted to move, so I bought it for them. Huh? What do you mean? My husband used our savings to buy an apartment for his parents without discussing it with me. We just have to save up again. Anyway, I don't need you telling me what to do with my own money. Ah, he is totally gone. I felt nothing, not even sadness or anger, like I was suddenly pulled down into a purgatory of nothingness. And then, I slowly grabbed his hands. I met my husband Eric at my college party. He was sitting across from me on the sofa, and I noticed him glancing at me. As the hour passed by and the party was at its peak, he and I went out on the quiet corner of the lawn hitting up a conversation. We had the same hobbies and interests, and it was exciting to chat with him. We exchanged our numbers and started dating. He proposed to me after 2 years when I was 25. It was my dream to marry young and start a family, so I said yes to him. We got a one-bedroom apartment close to his parents, and I quit my job and became a housewife as he requested. Soon after that, I got pregnant and had a son, Mark. Around this time, my in-laws started inviting us to their house often. They never contacted me directly, but asked me through Eric. I understood that they really wanted to see their grandson. They actually adored Mark and bought a lot of toys for him. Mark, who was very attached to me, was quickly used to them. However, every time I was at their house, I got an awkward feeling. Stacy, if you're too busy with housework, you don't have to come over. We are happy just the Eric and Mark. It feels claustrophobic here.
They seemed like they wanted to get rid of me. Mark was still little and cried when I wasn't around. I wasn't comfortable leaving him alone with elderly in-laws, so I stayed put no matter how they tried to throw me out. I guess they weren't pleased with my aloofness, that their attitude toward me became nastier. One day, when I was cleaning the house, I received a call from Eric. He was panicking over the phone because his mom called an ambulance for hitting her pinky against the table. He gave me the name of the hospital and told me to go ASAP. She just banged her pinky. Why was I sent to check on her just for that? I just did the same a few minutes ago. I was about to protest,
but he hung up on me. Reluctantly, I went out to the hospital. When I was walking toward the reception counter, I saw my mother-in-law sitting in the waiting room. She was chatting with other elderlies, but when I called out to her, "Aha, I bumped it a little. Eric is overreacting. Don't slack on chores and go home." Who exaggerated it by calling an ambulance? I stopped doing my chores to come here just for you. I don't deserve to be told slacking. As I started walking away, I heard her telling the others about me. "My daughter-in-law is really bad at taking care of housework and so lazy. I don't know what to do with her. On top of it, she's mean." I couldn't hear after that and just kept walking. I complained to Eric when he got home that night, but he only said, "Whatever, it's all good," and kept drinking beer. I got upset with his indifference. How the hell is it all good? "God, you're annoying. Stop complaining. I'm exhausted from work." He got mad at me, and we started the Cold War. We didn't speak to each other for about a week. I became uneasy that Eric might not give me the living expense for the next month. He was in charge of handling the family finance, and I usually got a monthly allowance to make ends meet. If he didn't, I wouldn't have been able to do so. Too worried that I apologized to him, who willing to accept it, and we went back to our normal life like nothing ever happened. Who knew something bigger was to come? Eric dropped the bomb just 3 days after we made it up. His mom had trouble walking, so we were to move in with them. I, of course, refused. I plan to go back to work after Mark starts middle school. I can't continue looking after her. "Well then, we are getting a divorce. You're a housewife, so you won't be able to support Mark. I will take custody." I couldn't retort to his comment. In fact, I was unemployed and didn't have the means to raise him. Even if I found a job now, where was I going to leave him? My parents lived with my brother, his wife, and their 5 kids. I couldn't put more weight on their shoulders. I had no choice but to accept his demand again. We were to break the contract of our apartment and move in with his parents at the end of the month. On the day of our move, his parents cheerfully welcomed Eric and Mark, but to me, they commanded the detailed rules of the house and instructed me to ask for their permission before I went out. There was nothing welcoming about it. Since then, their discrimination against me escalated. One day, I came back from grocery shopping a little before noon. I saw empty boxes of pizza on the kitchen counter, and it seemed like the family had just finished eating lunch. I clearly told them when I left, "I will make lunch, so please wait for me." "Oh, Stacy, we're craving pizza, so we ordered in. We left some for you on the dining table." "Thank you." I went to the dining room and opened the box. There was one piece of pizza inside. I felt frustrated to be left out again. The piece wasn't even whole, with a chunk missing on the side. Probably Mark had a bite. I didn't even get a complete piece of pizza. I felt like Mark was even mocking me, and my eyes became watery. Another time, the rain suddenly started while I was out. I had left our sneakers under the sun, so I rushed back home. When I got back, I found that my mother-in-law had already taken Eric and Mark's sneakers, but left mine out soaked in the rain. Eric and my father-in-law pretend to be oblivious. At lunch and dinner, if I served with a big sharing plate, they immediately took all without leaving any of me. So I served them separately with a single serving next time. They complained it was too small. Such was my life. In the end, I kept my own portion on the side before serving them and ate it secretly after they finished. I had been trying my best to not explode with anger, but I finally had enough and was about to plead with Eric for moving out, but, "Hey, I bought a new apartment. I will take you to see it. You'd like it for sure." I was flabbergasted. We never discussed such a matter, and where did the money come from? I was rushed to go and see it with him. It was a brand new apartment building in the center of the town. There was a mall, school, government office, and post office nearby. It was in a very convenient location. The apartment was just finished built a couple weeks ago. We entered the room at the corner of 8th floor. It was unbelievably bright, big, and had a great view. It was almost perfect. The moment I was about to ask him about the most important matter, "My parents say they really want to live here. I bought it with the sale of their house and all the savings. Isn't it amazing?" What? What the hell did he say? It was his parents' wish? Spend all the saving that was supposed to be for our son's education and our retirement. What in the world was so amazing about it? How could you do such a selfish thing? Please cancel the contract. I was in total panic and begged him to cancel. Huh? We just start saving again. Anyway, I don't need you to telling me what to do with my own money. A housewife has no say in this. He snapped back at me. You told me to quit my job and stay at home. The word divorce popped into my head, and I ran out of the apartment. When I got home, my father-in-law was watching TV, and my mother-in-law was busy on the phone. I hurried to collect the necessary things and pack them in a bag. Then I scrolled down "Let's Divorce" on a piece of paper and left it with my wedding ring on the desk. I rushed out of the house carrying Mark, who was half asleep. Let's get a room in a motel for now. We were wandering the street on foot without knowing what to do next. Then I heard a woman's voice calling me. "Stacy, isn't that you? Oh my God, is it?" I turned around and knew immediately who she was. "It's me, Amy. Remember me? Such a long time." She was my high school friend. We kept in touch after graduation, but we eventually became estranged. She got divorced from her husband who cheated on her and came back to her hometown last year. I told her about what had been going on in my life and mentioned divorce as well. She smirked and said, "I know the best divorce lawyer. I will pass you his contact." The lawyer happened to be the same guy with whom I had a crush in high school. I remember him clearly. I wanted to give him a birthday present, but there were already many decorations and gifts around his locker. I went to another locker he used for the tennis club, but it was also the same. So I took a bus to his home, but this time his mailbox was too small, and there was a barking dog in front of yard that I couldn't get to the porch. I didn't have the courage to directly give it to him, so I gave up and went home. A bittersweet memory of my youth. I got the location and phone number of his office and thanked Amy over and over when we parted. I couldn't waste a second, so I went directly to see him after that. I didn't book an appointment ahead of time, but I just needed to do something. A friendly middle-aged woman in the front assisted me and said I was in luck, that there was a cancellation. She even offered to babysit Mark and took me to the office. I waited for a little while, then Mr. Jackson showed up. He was handsome back then, but his good look was polished by age and he was gorgeous. Not only his face, but his body looked toned, and the way he carried himself in the suit was to die for. Compared to him, Eric was like Gollum. "Thanks for waiting. I'm Adam Jackson. Nice meeting you." He introduced himself as he pulled out his business card. I did likewise, but I noticed my voice was shaking. I apologized for showing up without an appointment, and then briefed him on the reason for my visit. He started asking me questions, but I had a hard time focusing. On top of his good appearance, his voice was a beautiful tenor. As I was listening to him, I couldn't stop imagining him getting better with age like George Clooney. We were in the office for about an hour and a half. It was the happiest time of my life in a long while. I thanked Adam and the woman vigorously before I left. Mark had been a good boy all this time, and I swore to myself to be strong for him. While I got temporary custody, Adam continued negotiation with Eric attorney. Of course, he wasn't willing to settle easily, and was too carried away by his rage that he couldn't even think straight. Hence, we went to a trial.
Don't worry, it happens often. I got this.
Adam tried to soothe my anxiety. I got a ride from him to the court on the day of our trial. As soon as I got there, I felt a knot in my stomach. I was going to see Eric for the first time since I left. When he saw me enter the room, he immediately grimaced at me.
You bitch! What the hell do you think you're doing? Who took care of you all this time? You owe me!
He looked like he was about to jump on me, so the security and his lawyer restrained him and dragged him out of the hallway. I was horrified. Even if we divorced, he might take revenge. I could hear him screaming, and his lawyer said,
It's gonna have a negative effect. And the worst case, the police.
Then it became quiet. We went through the hearing without an incident after that. Mark and I were offered to stay with Amy's parents for the time being. They ran a local diner and hired me as a waitress out of their kindness. In addition to that, they had an unused trailer in their backyard, which they offered us to stay in. One night, I don't know how they found out, but Eric's parents showed up at the house. They tried to cross the yard toward my trailer, and Amy's parents stopped them.
Hey, come out, you coward! Give us Mark!
I heard them shouting. Amy signed me to hide and went out to deal with them. If you don't leave now, we'll call the police. As she said this, she was already calling. They realized the seriousness and tried to run away, but Amy's parents held them in place. The policeman arrived within a minute. After hearing both sides, they escorted in-laws back to the car and made sure they drove away. I frantically apologized to Amy and her parents and started packing my things, but they stopped me and told me it was safer to stay with them. Your divorce drama is quite entertaining. I'm so geared up to fight with you. Wait. I felt threatened for my life here. Came to think of it, she was into Spanish soap operas. 2 months later, thanks to Adam, I was able to get good alimony, custody, and child support. I could finally cut all ties and move on with my life. I can live freely doing whatever I chose to do. I held Mark tightly in my arms. He needs to be reassured that I would always be by his side. Before I parted with Adam, I not only thanked him for the job he had done, but finally told him that I actually knew him from high school. He didn't remember me, but he was kind to tell me that I could count on him if there was anything. Later on, the rumor of my in-laws' incident spread in their neighborhood, and Eric too was seen by the neighbors as an abusive husband. They were too embarrassed that they moved to another town. Eric had sold a new apartment and paid me half of the profit. He was in debt from the trial and still had to pay me alimony and child support, so he lived in a trailer park. I had been afraid of his retaliation against me, but he wasn't as stupid as I thought. He never tried to get in touch with me. As for the in-laws, even after the first incident, they had been warned by the police they kept coming to see me, so they eventually got arrested. After spending some time in the pen, they both got ill and were sent to a facility by Eric. As for me, I still work at the diner. Hey Stacy, have a break. Let's get something to eat. Thanks, yeah, let's eat. I take off my name tag and sit down in a booth. Amy joined with a cheeky smile on her face. So, how's it going with Adam? Direct to the point, huh? Of course, I want to know everything. Adam had asked me out a little after our last meeting, and we started seeing each other. He is supposed to meet Mark officially this weekend. I tell Amy about it. Wow, Mark's finally meeting him. Where are you guys going? Who suggested bringing Mark? She's so excited with many questions. Good food, good friends, and a re-encounter with my old crush. I've had terrible experiences, but I'm glad that I had the courage to get out of my old life, because now I'm standing at the end of the tunnel. I feel grateful and blessed to be able to stay with Mark more than anything. I will live my own life surrounded by good people, supporting each other from now on.
My husband came to dishonor my family and me at my dad's funeral. He was faced with his own demon.
The old man's finally gone. He lived so long for nothing. Now you can claim his life insurance, right? I can finally be compensated for the misfortune of getting married to you. Show me how much you're getting now. I have no interest in joining your impoverished dad's hick funeral.
The words that came out of my husband's mouth were no condolence, but pure insults to my dad and me at the funeral. Not only that,
here, my contribution to a gift of assistance. Pick them up.
ching ching. He threw coins from his pocket at me and let out the scornful laugh. There was no sign of the kind man who gave me the lucky silver dime and encouragement in the past. How did it all come to this? My vision was blurred by tears of rage and misery. Suddenly, a man appeared in front of me. He plays a crucial part in what was to come next. I was 35 years old, working at a confectionery plant. My ex-husband and I met at the previous work. I was a fresh graduate and had no clue what I was doing at work. Why am I making so many mistakes? Everyone else but me is getting it right. I thought we all had minor flaws at first, but I kept struggling to learn the new tasks. We all worked independently, and the company didn't create a friendly environment to support each other, so I was totally lost. When I made mistakes, my colleagues were burdened. I was the type to drag my mistake with me, so I was getting crushed by their weight. One day, it became too much to bear, and I hid crying in a corner of a small kitchen at work. A guy who happened to find me there was my ex-husband.
What's wrong? You want to talk?
Thank you. I made a mistake again. He was 2 years older than me and had been working there for a while. He listened to my gloom and doom and made me smile. What a nice guy, I thought to myself and calmed down a bit in his presence. My ex remembered something and pulled out his wallet. He picked a coin and said,
"This is a lucky silver dime from 1944. I hope this brings you much good luck. Here."
I swore to myself that I would always keep it with me no matter what. I was head over heels for him afterward and asked a colleague to help to get closer to him. We eventually started dating and fell in love with each other, so we got married. I was purely ecstatic about our happy life together, but there was one person who didn't agree with me. It was my dad, who was devoted his daily farm all his life. He was a man of few words and had never spoken to me much growing up, but he had a clear objection to my marriage.
I believe it's a rush to get married to him now. I don't trust him. He looks like a nice guy, but I sense there is someone else hiding. You should wait a little longer and got to know him better.
Wait, I choose him. How do you know he is or isn't good for me after meeting him once? Besides, you've never given me any fatherly advice before, and now you put on your father's mask and give me a lecture? I am an adult. I don't need your permission. Hearing him against my decision for the first time, I became upset and blamed him more than I should have. He never said a word about it after that. I ignored his warning, got married, and left home. We had never gotten in touch since then. It's all good. I have my husband. I'm happy with my marriage. I chatted to myself and pretended there was nothing wrong in my life. The truth was, my reality wasn't going the way I imagined. A little after we got married, my ex started acting arrogant toward me.
Hey, where's my dinner? Didn't I tell you to clean the house? Aren't you embarrassed living in a mess like this? I want to wear this tomorrow, so iron it. And don't forget to polish my shoes.
Even though he treated me badly, I tried my best to balance my work and home life. I managed to perfect housework, not to be criticized. My ex took it for granted and never showed his appreciation to me. Yay me! Good job!
Huh? Of course, you should be able to do all this as a wife. Your screw must be loose. Asking for a compliment. If this was praiseworthy, you should get on your knees and thank me for my job.
He got promoted to manager, which he used to disgrace me all the time.
All your work proposals are lame and boring. They show you are born and raised in the dead of the countryside. Your existence stinks of mud.
Not only he degraded me, but he also disrespected my family. I was getting fed up with him. In addition to this, he made fun of my hobby, which was drawing sketches of new dessert ideas. I was really into it and spent a lot of my time drawing. He shrugged them off and criticized them as terrible design and said I was wasting my time. In the end, he escalated to looking down on my family and the daily products that were sent to us.
Eh, smell of a savage. Send me T-bone instead. It's a shame your family is too poor to send me anything of value.
He spat out his venom. What a moron. It was disgusting that he couldn't appreciate the kindness of others. I should have told him off, but I disliked confrontation and couldn't stand up for myself. I was also worried about being lost without him if he kicked me out. I wouldn't have had anywhere to go. The thought of it kept me from arguing with him. He knew he had control over me, so his behavior worsened. One day, I cooked a white stew using the milk from my family. As I kind of expected,
ew, it smells rancid. Stinks of poverty. I can't eat poor people's food.
He viciously criticized. To be honest, I was prepared for his slamming and was going to just shrug it off. But he went a step farther this time.
Before it stinks up the whole house with the odor of poverty, I'm gonna trash it. I feel like I'm in jail being served such food. Seriously, you're the worst wife.
He dumped the pot with the stew inside into a bin. I finally exploded and started yelling. How could you throw the food I took time to make? You're disgusting to waste perfectly good food like that. Instead of apologizing, he snapped back.
Blah, blah, blah. You're so dull, useless, and annoying. Who do you think you're speaking to? I'm better than you. You're just the weight on my shoulders. Don't need you anymore.
And then he scornfully told me why he married me.
I thought a 35-year-old hag would have a lot of savings. You seemed like you were out of the dating loop all your life. I just wanted to take your money and use you like a child robot. You wanted me anyway, so it's a win-win, right?
I was aghast by his unjust and malevolent revelation and his nonchalant demeanor. Was the reason we delayed our marriage to make me save more money? It was all your scheme? My savings are almost gone because you've been splurging, you know.
You were right, but you never mentioned your savings are almost gone. How's that my fault? It's your job to take care of the finance, so you take responsibility. A penniless wife is of no value to me, lower than your farm animals.
He ranted in a vile manner, and then he suddenly pulled out my sketches from the shelf. He ripped the pages into pieces as he shouted, "Pathetic!" Threw them all over the place and walked out of the room. What have I ever done to you? I just tried to do my best to make our lives better. Of course, I couldn't sleep at all, but cried my eyes out that night. The next day,
We're getting divorced. Get out.
he didn't even look up from the paper he was reading. Okay. I was thinking the same in bed last night, so I simply agreed with him. I collected my things in silence and left the house. When I stepped outside, the face of my dad, who disagreed with this marriage, popped into my head. He somehow knew we weren't going to work out. Why was I so adamant about his words back then? I'm very sorry, Dad. Tears welled up in my eyes. I wondered what he would say if I told him I was getting a divorce. Would he have been mad at me for not listening to him? Would he have been disappointed? He might no longer have spoken to our daughter, who snapped at him in the first place. I couldn't find answers to the questions, and I started living alone without the courage to go and tell him. I managed to find an apartment with my meager savings, but my ex spread a bad rumor about me, and I became very uneasy working there. I was mentally exhausted. When I was absent-mindedly going through job ads on the internet, I came across a listing of a bakery manufacturer. Working as a pâtissier used to be my dream. I may have been too old to change a career, but never try, never know. I was given a fresh start working at a manufacturer, and learning new skills gave me back the confidence. Once I was back to myself, I decided to do one thing I had been putting off. I planned to visit my dad and tell him about my divorce and a new career. That night, I got a call from my mom, who was sobbing. Your dad passed away in the hospital today. Please come home. The memorial service is the day after. It was so sudden that my mind went blank. I immediately packed up my things and drove as fast as I could to the ranch. And then I saw him lying peacefully in a casket. It was too late. I was too late. When I saw the shriveled corpse of my dad, I finally got a grasp of the reality, and the waves of regret washed over me. I didn't come clean about my divorce, and never got to apologize to him. Why did you leave so soon, Dad? I was going to tell you everything. I'm sorry for troubling you and not coming sooner. I soaked up my pillow with my tears all night without sleep. 2 days later, his memorial service took place at the ranch. I was too devastated that I was like a zombie. Then suddenly, my ex appeared before me. He learned about my dad's passing through a mutual friend. I expected him to mourn my dad as long as he was at the service, but my expectation was quickly shut down.
Hey, so when are you getting your inheritance? Since I took care of you, you need to pay me for that. I've waited so long for the country bumpkin to die. Anyway, a hillbilly memorial is so plain, isn't it? Don't tell me you don't have money. Just sell this useless ranch to get more. It's your chance to make me think that I was lucky to have married you.
Even on such a solemn occasion, my ex showed his despicable self and tried to dishonor my dad and me. Leave now. There's no place for a vile man here. I was outraged by his immoral behavior. He didn't care and continued with his rant.
Pay me then, I will leave. I don't even want to be in this hick town. You always make things complicated with me, so it takes longer than needed. That's why I divorced you.
He sniggered, blaming me for our divorce. Even though we were at the far corner of the room, away from the others, people were starting to get curious about us.
Here, my contribution to a gift of assistance.
He suddenly put a scornful smile, as if a great idea came into his head, and shoved his hand in his pocket.
So the wicked perish at the presence of me.
He imitated a priest performing an exorcism and threw the coins at me. Ching ching. The sound of coins hitting the floor echoed through the room. He kept his dreadful smile on his face and picked up a dime from the floor. I exactly knew what he meant. Where did the kind guy I first met go? He gave me the lucky silver dime. How did it all come to this? My tears flowed uncontrollably from the despair. Then, a man walked up in front of me.
I apologize for my delay. My deep condolences to you. I'm very sorry about your dad.
A man in a luxurious suit spoke to me. My ex looked surprised and pushed me aside. He quickly put on a broad smile and raised his hand to shake the man's hand. The man happened to be his important contact for the big project he had been working on. He was blabbing non-stop to the man, who glanced at me over my ex's shoulder. My ex saw it and then started shaming me.
She's my useless ex-wife. She thinks crying would make everything better. She sits high up on the throne and have no intention of improving herself. I'm too ashamed that I was just giving her a lecture.
He laughed lightheartedly. He must have been high, thinking he looked like an authoritative figure, but the man remained stoic and spoke calmly.
I take back the contract with your company. What?
The blood drained from my ex's face hearing the man.
She is a key person in the project. I would never associate with a company that humiliates my excellent employee in public. This dull woman is your excellent employee? Must be some mistake.
Ignoring my ex, who was going frantic, the man called his boss on the spot and said the contract had been cancelled. Then my ex's phone rang immediately after. His voice was trembling and kept apologizing into his phone. My dad's ranch was a small scale, but the quality of his product was known to be one of the best in the industry. The taste was even praised by famous pâtissiers. It was a pure coincidence that I started working at my current job. My big boss was a fan of my dad's milk and butter, and trusted my sense of taste that had been nurtured by the top quality. My dad didn't tell my ex about his ranch in detail, and I too never boasted about my family business, so he never found out the truth. Looking back on it, I thought maybe my dad was testing his character. My ex finished his call and turned to me with a ghost-like face. He must have thought that his career was over without this project. He all of a sudden changed his demeanor and pleaded with me.
Please, talk to him and make him change his mind. I didn't really mean to harm you. Please forgive me.
An apology only for the sake of self-preservation. I had reached my boiling point and let out all my frustration to him.
Huh? You self-centered bastard?
What are you talking about? Do you think crying would make things better? Right back at you. One of the sketches you tore apart that day is the origin of this project. Now you want to sell my lame crepe made with my dad's milk that you said stunk of poverty? The project that my ex was working on for the company was the sales of crepes I created and supervised using a cream made from fresh milk from my dad's ranch. When he found out the detail,
"No one told me! Why haven't you mentioned it to me?"
He snapped at me and kicked the chairs around him. The man stoically picked up the chairs and put them back in place.
"You may not realize, but there are many people from our industry here. There is no point in resisting anymore. Your misdemeanor will be spread in no time. You have no place."
My ex fell to the floor in desperation and pleaded with me.
"Please help me! I'm gonna lose everything. I apologize for what I have done, so please."
He clung to me miserably. "Well, I owe you for something." I intentionally used a sweet tone of voice. He looked up at me smiling, thinking he was saved. Looking at my egocentric ex, I hammered the final nail in the coffin. "This would be my last payment to you." I grabbed the lucky silver coin he gave me when we first met from my purse, lowered it to his eye level, and then dropped it on the floor. You make your own luck. Hope you understand that someday. He was stunned and frozen like a statue. Ironically, the table had turned and he started bawling. Be quiet! You still want to keep distracting the memorial? Stop acting like a baby. Aren't you ashamed of yourself? You're the lamest person right now. Good riddance to bad luck. There was absolutely nothing he could do or say, so he ran out of the house with his tail between his legs. A week after my dad's funeral, my ex, who was responsible for the failure of the project, was severely reprimanded by his superiors. When he was kicked out of the team, it was discovered that the project budget had been embezzled by him. He was fired from the company and criminally charged. He became exhausted by the fact that all his bad deeds had come back to him. He finally learned his lesson and supposedly was living in a shabby apartment alone. My dad's ranch was decided to be run by his lawyer staff who had inherited his motto. They maintained the same quality of products and were gradually expanding the scale of their business. The man who canceled the project told me that he knew my dad for a long time. He met up with my dad after I was hired by his company. Your daughter is putting a lot of effort into her work amidst her divorce. I would like to support her as much as I can. He had blurted out about my divorce, but I was thankful that my dad at least knew. Oh, she's divorcing. I guess my instinct was right. It's heartbreaking to know that she was being abused by that fool, and even my family was disrespected. Knowing her well, I worry that she pushed herself too much. I'm ashamed of myself for not reaching out to her when she was suffering. I want to watch her rebuild her own happy life from now on. Even though he was told about the bad news of my divorce, he apparently looked relieved. It may be just my wish, but I believe she would be an outstanding patissier. I know I'm asking a lot from you, but please look after my daughter. My dad held the man's hand tightly in both of his for a while. I couldn't stop crying while I was listening to the story. Finally finding out what my dad thought of me made me feel so grateful. I had been hating myself for being miserable and crying in front of my ex-husband. I felt that I could really look forward and build my own life now. I'm sorry, Dad, for not being at your side in your last moments. There have been many struggles, but I'm better now. I'm living a full life, learning to be a patissier. I'm going to use a lot of your products that you conserved all those years. Please watch over me from heaven. Love you so much. With my heart full of gratefulness to my dad. I promise to keep working hard to be a good patissier, as he believed.
My 54-year-old husband was in love with a 24-year-old and divorced me without realizing what devastation was to come.
An old hag like you isn't worth having as my wife. I'm divorcing you.
My husband I had been with for a long time said. I swallowed my arguments and reluctantly accepted his demand. He hadn't realized what a fool he was then. My name is Christy. I had been supporting my husband Dan while working as a nurse. His salary had been raised a little by little over the years, but it still wasn't possible to live solely on his paycheck. We had our struggles, but we made it to this day by supporting each other. 30 years had passed since we got married. It had been wonderful for me. I enjoy balancing home and work life, and above all, being with Dan was still my greatest joy. We didn't want to have kids, so spending our time together without distractions was pure bliss every night. Dan never strayed from the marriage and put all his effort into his work for us. Maybe he wasn't so good at it, so it took a little longer to be promoted compared to his peers, but I didn't care. Better than having him overworked and end up in the hospital. It was a time for fresh graduates to join his company.
Hey, guess what? I am appointed as a trainer of new employees for the first time.
Wow, congrats! You're finally recognized. He downed a beer happily without leaving a drop at dinner. Before him, the role was taken by his peers and seniors. After all, it was an important position that could only be entrusted to employees who produced a certain level of result. He had finally been appointed for that. Watching him animated with joy made me delighted.
Maybe I will get a raise if I do well and put more effort into my other job too.
Don't push yourself too hard. I took a real drink myself as I nudged an elated Dan. I had no doubt about us continuing to have a happy life forever, even though there was no promise for the future. Dan welcomed the new employee, Mary, as his trainee. She was beautiful and charming, so her co-workers treated her fondly. The ones with a big age gap saw her as their daughter, and the ones close to her age eyed her as their potential girlfriend. Everyone was attentive to her, and Dan, who was closer to her than anyone else, got to see her charms up close. She naturally relied on him for anything. Whenever he taught her a job, she thanked him with a smile. For someone who rarely got praised, being appreciated by her made him truly happy. He was fond of her as a trainee at first, but before he knew it, he was enamored by her. Eventually, he started to mention her at home. I could sense a strange intimacy in his words, even though he said she was a pain in the neck. I had been with him for so long that I had no intention to be suspicious and question him. I became more mature and wiser. I thought it was no big deal if a rare occasion of having a young and cute girl around delighted him. I get excited too when I see a good-looking guy, but it was only an attraction and nothing compared to love. I believe it was the same for Dan. I pushed my anxiety all the way to the back of my head, but his merry fever continued without a sign of coming down. On the contrary, it grew hotter and hotter.
Mary is a true beauty. It's not just because she's young. It must be her effort she puts into it. Maybe you will look better if you put more effort too.
He started saying a terrible thing he had never done before.
Oh man, why haven't you done it? Mary would have taken the initiative. I guess she's very different from you after all.
He compared me to her at every opportunity and sighed heavily. As you would think, I got a bad feeling. The hunch soon became a certainty.
Please divorce me.
When we were eating dinner, he said as if he was commenting on the weather.
You're okay being alone, right?
I was speechless, and he carried on.
Mary is so vulnerable. Compared to you, she needs me. I turn out to be a kind of a man someone can rely on.
He joyfully said as he raised his left hand in front of my face and pointed to the wedding band the same as mine.
Mary complimented me when she saw this. She said it was wonderful that I have been cherishing you for 30 years and admired me.
Seeing him as cheery as a child, I could only feel sorry for him. Mary was talking about a guy who cherished me. She never mentioned a guy who divorces me for her. He was completely drowned in and blinded by the love not suited for his age. Wait, why don't you think about it a little more?
I did, and this is my conclusion. You became an old hag anyway. You're not worth being my wife. I'm a man respected by such a young girl.
He called me an old hag, and I wondered if he hadn't noticed the deep crow's feet around his smiling eyes, if he hadn't seen his receding hairline a year by year, and if he hadn't considered his far out of the fashion that made him look like an old-timer. Okay, if you say that much, but you won't regret it.
Of course not.
He nodded confidently and guzzled a beer like it was a celebration. It was so sudden and I couldn't think straight, so I asked him to give me some time. The next day, I decided to investigate the relationship between Dan and Mary and called a friend who also worked with them. I had been married for so long that I got to know some of his colleagues well. I never thought that I would use this friendship for something like this though. After briefing a friend over the phone, she made time to meet me. How have you been? You got some drama going on. I know, right? I'm so confused about this. I felt more embarrassed than anxious, but I asked her what she had seen and heard in the office. Honestly, everyone knows Dan is chasing after Mary. She rolled her eyes and smiled. He had never been depended on before. It must have gone straight to his head. He seems to be confused with the feeling of gratitude and love. Does Mary seem to feel the same toward him? Let me ask you instead, do you think so? A charming girl who everyone likes? I shook my head no. I haven't said a word to Dan, but she is aware of his feeling toward her. She was trying to find the right words, but gave up and let out a small sigh. How to say this? She says his approach is wearing her out. I forgot my anger for a moment and felt pity for him. I was right. Dan was drowning in self-satisfied love. He wasn't able to differentiate praise in recognition of the man and a genuine appreciation for a colleague who taught her the job. Mary didn't want him to have a wrong idea, so she commented on his wedding ring. But I guess he took it the opposite of what she aimed for. He even showed off his bare ring finger in front of her. I'm so embarrassed for him. I fanned my face with a hand to cool off, but it was adamant just like Dan's self-satisfied love. My friend told me more about Mary, and I became interested to meet her in person. My friend called her on the spot. She agreed to come out right away. In a short while, a pretty girl walked up to our table. Hi, I'm Mary. It's my pleasure to meet you. She had a very good manner for a young girl. I thanked her for coming out and prompted her to sit across from me. I'm sorry to bother you out of the blue. As you already know, I'm Dan's wife. He has been a wonderful trainer to me. She smiled like an angel. It sounds like he has been giving you unwanted attention. She became a little awkward and nodded her head. He's very good at explaining the job, but he's an idiot. I apologize on behalf of him. Seeing her reaction, I had no doubt that he was nothing but a nuisance to her. I actually have a boyfriend. Oh, I didn't know. It seemed Dan never even checked if she was already in a relationship. Apparently, her boyfriend worked for a different company his father founded, which meant he was a successor. While he was in a training to be the future CEO, she refused to depend on him and held a job of her own to build a healthy relationship. They planned to get engaged once his training was finished, and then get married and move overseas when his transfer was decided. It sounded like she had a bright future ahead of her. Listening to her fearlessness, I felt like I was hearing myself when I was younger. I too wanted to build a strong marriage and worked hard alongside Dan for 30 years. The marriage I treasured wasn't as important to him as to me. The truth was swelling up my emotions. I see. Then cut Dan out of your life completely. You're a beautiful girl. Watch out for many more creeps that come close to you. I envy and admire your future. We continued to chit-chat for a little more until they had to go back to the office. On the way back home, I stopped at the attorney's office and discussed my divorce. Dan was supposed to come back home for dinner. I normally cook myself, but I had to take away pork chops and champagne that night.
Is it your birthday today?
No, it's for our farewell. I told him that I went to see a lawyer who would contact him shortly. His face was stunned for a second, but immediately changed to a big smile.
Thank you.
I'm starving, but let's have a look at the terms I proposed before we eat. While I set up the table, he hummed some light-hearted tunes as he went through them. He was scribbling additional notes in a way his pen was dancing in the air. What a cheerful handwriting compared to the gloom I felt seeing the lawyer. We eventually had our last supper together. He must have been relieved to get rid of an old hag like me. He downed 2 cans of beer. I picked up the cans laying next to him, who was dozing off on the sofa, and brought them to the kitchen. Before dropping them in a bin, I crushed one of them as hard as I could with my hand, and then I dropped the deformed can into a bin. Goodbye, good riddance, I whispered to Dan, who was sleeping and left the home I spent 30 years of my life with him. While waiting for the divorce to finalize, I found a new apartment and moved in. I had been working all this time, so there was no financial hardship to start my new life. Contrary to my worry, it was refreshing and carefree to work and cook for myself. I enjoyed my new life feeling like a young singleton once again. The portion of money I used to buy beers for Dan went to my new cosmetic and clothes instead. I felt myself brightening up. As for Dan, he depended all of the housework on me, so he started to look shabbier and shabbier, which eventually made Mary keeping distance from him. In addition to the already apparent signs of aging, he became even more careless. No wonder she didn't feel good being around him. Still, he mistook her distance for shyness, not disgust, and to everyone's surprise, he proposed to her. Of course, he was declined. It was an unforeseen event for him, and still he couldn't easily give up on a girl he chose over his marriage. Again, to everyone's surprise, he intruded on her apartment, and her boyfriend called the police. He was almost taken by the police, but Mary refused to put a charge on him out of her kindness. The matter was settled with a stern warning. The bad reputation at his work didn't settle as quickly as incident. Soon, he was known to be a creep who divorced his wife to become a stalker. Undeniable rumors were spreading throughout the company. He was never a prominent worker, so the company easily dismissed him. He was abandoned again. Out of desperation, he started gambling with all the money he had. After seeing Mary's boyfriend, he believed she would change her mind once he became rich. Of course, he had no talent or luck in gambling. Only the ever-increasing debt had kept him company. He finally had to sell the apartment we lived in and moved into a trailer park. Even in such a miserable state, he still had Mary in his heart. He waited for her outside of his old office, but he never got to see her again. She had gotten married and had already moved abroad with her husband. He was in total despair without any emotional support and gave me a call after a long while. His voice over the phone sounded way older than I remembered, like he aged years in a matter of several months. "Please, take me back." His voice trembled. I was silent for a moment and then spoke softly. Our relationship was thrust into a bin with a can of beer that night. Goodbye. He was calling my name as I hung up on him, and then I blocked him for good. I put my phone in a bag and went out. The friend who told me about Dan and Mary was coming out to dinner with me. Having a new fulfilled life, I had told her that I wanted to go to a good steakhouse. Pork chop? Okay, but why? For farewell? What the? I was working in the air from the excitement to celebrate the true end of my old chapter.